You're listening to PatchBay on tymkrs.
Welcome to PatchBay, the show where we talk about stuff that we haven't discussed previously. Hopefully. Otherwise, it would get really boring. But generally, it's about audio stuff. Sometimes we get a little bit off the beaten path of audio discussions. Like, this isn't like Gear Sluts, where we talk about the same thing every week.
Yeah, I have a Neumann U87 microphone. That's what I use on everything. And no, you're right.
How can I get the best sound for under insert a number?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, that's annoying. I was gonna say though, we probably should write down what it is we do talk about so that we don't cover the same thing. But
We're that old. We might accidentally just start repeating ourselves.
There's always a possibility.
Okay, listeners, if we start going into dottery, just let us know.
Yeah.
And we'll try to come up with something better for you. But, feedback at tymkrs.com. That's the email if you want to let us know that we're absolutely terrible or something like that. That's the place to send it. We'll see it there. If you want to compliment us, that's okay too. I mean, it doesn't have to be criticism. But for this week, I think this is a new topic for us, and I think I don't know. I know way too much about it, but I was hoping Shane might know a thing or two. He's I think you're as old as I am, Shane, probably a little bit older. So I grew up in the era where video games were starting to come into play, and video game music is very, very interesting to me. What do you think, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, it's really come a long way over the last 25 years, or 20 years, I guess. But
well, now you're getting into holy war territory with that, so I'd watch your step there, sir.
Holy war. Okay, no, I don't have any. There's nothing wrong with Mario Brothers or Coleco soundtracks, but
because I was gonna say, in my neighborhood, I wouldn't say video game music has gotten better. I'd say it's gotten a lot worse.
Really? Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess it depends on I think it depends on the video game.
True.
If you're talking about playing when you're talking about playing like a basic kind of video game, like let's say Super Mario Brothers, for example, everybody knows the soundtrack. But if you're playing a game that's like that, or if you're creating a newer game that had that same kind of 2D feel to it, it would probably be smart for you to try and stay in that vein if you were creating music for it, rather than to create something new and not as as part of the theme, right?
Maybe. One of the projects I'm working on in the background right now is scoring a video game. So this has been on my mind lately, and it's a new title. It's not retro, so I can't do the 8-bit music as much as I might want to. I can't. I have to do it in a more modern fashion, just because it fits the visual aesthetic of the game a lot more to do it that way. But I am trying to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that I've seen in games over the last 15 years or so, and stick more to the rules that applied back then. And I think it's the reason why I say it's gone down a lot is because when they were generating the music on the fly, rather than pre-recording it and just playing back the MP3 or whatever, the person doing the part of the engine that created the music was typically working directly with or was the same dude that was composing the music. And I think that is one thing that shouldn't have ever changed. I think that's one thing that made the music a lot stronger in those games and a lot more memorable, because the composer was working more closely with the programmer, or was actually the programmer. Also, the composers for the music then were classically trained musicians,
Hmm.
who happen to be knowledgeable enough about computers to get involved. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and some of them were extremely talented.
I was gonna. What I was gonna mention was that if you were doing surf guitar, like surf music, you need to have, as part of the aesthetic of the sound, you need to have that guitar with the crazy, Fender reverb on it. And if you were doing a, sort of 2D esque game, you'd need to be sort of in that 8-bit kind of territory. That was basically what I was trying to get at earlier. Um, I agree with you. I think that stuff tends to get farmed out too much, and they'll just be like, "I need a dramatic sequence," but not send them what the game looks like or what it, you know, uh, feels like or what it's even about. Sometimes, in cases, and the other thing that worries me is that I think a lot of, I'm not going to say this for sure, but I have it. I tend to wonder if there's guys who are creating music that isn't created for the specific game, but has been created and they're selling them tracks after
Yeah,
the fact.
there's a whole
Uh,
industry out there of stock
Porno.
music, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you can just go through the
Yeah.
stock music catalog, pick what you want, pay the licensing fee, and use it for whatever. And
But even,
as useful as that is for people who are not musicians, as a musician who can create the music for something, I I definitely, I mean, it's kind of like using PowerPoint to do your presentation. I mean, it's like, okay, yes, it works, fine, it's efficient,
mm,
whatever. It also stinks.
yeah, it sucks ass. No, I know exactly I know exactly what you're getting at. I was gonna mention, so the music that you're creating for the game that you're creating. I remember reading an article about doing uh, sound for video games, and one of the biggest things that tends to happen is with sample rates and size of the music is in the music is the secondary thing in most video games compared to the graphics and yada 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 and dialogue to a degree. But what I'm specifically talking about is a console game. If you're doing sound for those, there's a specific set of requirements that you're allowed as far as how many megs you're allowed of music.
Sure.
And it was a really interesting article. I'll see if I can find it for you. But it talks about how when guys are doing sound effects for, let's say, Halo on Xbox, right?
Hmm.
They'll they'll use a program like Cubase's Big Brother. I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head, but it allows you to play back different audio files at different sample rates and bit rates with all within the same session. Pro Tools is, it's like, your audio is 24-bit, 44. That's it. That's all it's ever going to be in that session. But in this other program, it would allow you to say have a really high quality audio for the music bed soundtrack, but like say the gunshots or something, you could go 16-bit and you could go 44, to save audio room because these guys have these specific requirements as far as how much room is allowed, on a release, I guess. So, do you have any idea as far as what what the end medium is going to be on the thing that you might be working on?
Yes, because I'm designing the sound engine with the programmer, I have absolute control of how that functions and what bit rate and all of that. So, yeah, I can actually figure out ways to solve the problems. So basically, one of the reasons why, for those of you out there who may not be familiar with how this stuff works under the hood, one of the reasons why you can't typically have very, very high quality sound in games is because there's just simply not enough memory available to store the music as you're caching it in and out and playing it. Or there's not enough room on whatever the storage medium is for the game. You want to keep it small. A lot of games are downloaded to the consoles now, and the bigger they are, the longer it takes, the more storage it takes online in the cloud, whatever. And you want to keep these things as small as possible. So it's kind of really important to always keep that in mind when you're composing. You don't want to do things that require a lot of subtle detail because, yeah.
Well, and that part of it is, the loudness war too, where if you're, especially with a video game, you're running into lots of other extraneous noises that are happening. If you're playing an Xbox game at home and somebody might be vacuuming or, whatever the case is, you need to hear the gunshots, or whatever.
And your music is going to be coming out of TV speakers, which are, low quality crap speakers typically. And there's going to be lots of competition with noise. And you always need to keep these things in mind when you're composing something for a very specific and uncontrolled environment. It's not like you're making this for an audiophile who's going to be listening to it on a $20,000 turntable or something. This is kind of like mixing for your iPod earbuds. You're attacking it from a slightly different vector, right?
Right. Exactly. I was going to mention. So with the project, I guess your friend is doing the actual game part of it.
Yeah, I'm a programmer too, so I've got some how do you say design input on how it works, but he's doing the code. It's Roy Eltham. I do a couple of other things with him as well. He was the graphics engine designer over at Sony Online Entertainment, worked on a bunch of games there, PlanetSide, EverQuest, a bunch of stuff. Now he works at Valve Corporation, working with them. I can't really say what he does, but yeah, that's because they're a super secret alien hive ship and they're trying to take over mankind.
I was going to say that there might be something like that.
Yeah. But thankfully with his new job, we're able to sort of work together on the side on these sort of side projects. And we found out that there was this cool new console that was up on Kickstarter called the Ouya. And it's a little tiny cube that has just an HDMI output. You hook it up to a TV and the internets. And basically it's kind of like a Roku in that there's all the content is up online for free. You can play any of the games on it for free. There's no charge. The games, it's up to the game designers themselves to figure out how to monetize internally. So yeah, it runs Android, sort of an open platform kind of thing. So we basically helped fund the project as developer levels. So we'll be getting our consoles much earlier than the public, and the Kickstarter was very successful. Many millions and millions of dollars went over there so that they can send out, I think, like 40,000 units when they open up.
Yeah, I was going to say Kickstarter, provides you have a really good idea. And easy
I think it's a pretty good idea. Consoles have been dead to me since last one I bought was like a Nintendo 64, right? So it's been a long time since I've messed with consoles. And coming back to them, I want to come back to them as a developer so that I can sort of bring back some of the magic that used to be on the NES era, right?
Yeah, exactly. But being able to save.
Yeah, which is nice. Yeah.
Don't turn that off. Don't even walk close to it.
This is definitely for a console, and it's definitely a limited memory situation, so I have to be very clever about how I manage the file sizes, or I would be if I weren't a freaking super genius, Shane.
Exactly.
Super genius. So I came up with a fun way of
freaking laser beam.
Yeah. So by approaching it like it was back in the day, where you've got more than one voice that you can control, we're mixing together multiple, essentially wave files, right? Multiple sounds. We're mixing them together just as you guys would do in the studio or whatever. We're mixing them down, but we're doing it live.
Cool.
So the game engine actually knows how to mix down multiple channels of audio, which isn't strange, but we're building in the whole quantizing and triggering that you'd find in Ableton or something like that, so that our samples are actually short little files. And we can pick a collection of them to play all simultaneously, and it mixes the audio down. Now,
Right.
here's the fun part. We can keep track of all sorts of different things during gameplay.
Mm.
So if the player is doing this thing and they're doing this well at it in this place, all of these are factors that help the algorithm pick which
Yeah, it's like
elements to play at that exact moment. And as the
I was gonna say
composer,
it's like basic. Yeah.
I can pick a key, stay in it, a tempo, stay in it, and design everything around that so that no matter what's going on, everything will always come together musically as well. And then I've got the entire musical catalog that's inside of its little database there to pick from if I want to, or just let the game control it if that's appropriate according to what they're doing. Just kind of neat.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's a
That's
fun
very cool.
project. I've been having fun thinking about it and putting the pieces together.
Yeah, exactly. So where do you get the inspiration to create the music part of it from?
The
Are you?
sounds were just sort of getting started with that. It's more of the basis of the game is that you're basically looking through a lot of the time you're looking through a microscope at a little drop of pond water, right? So
Okay.
the musical idea here is that it's more ethereal, it's more texture, right? It's
Mm.
not bouncy jouncy pop music sort of thing, right?
Mhm.
It's more atmospheric. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then if something bad happens, it starts to get a little bit more darker than.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of
Okay. Well,
thing.
that sounds like fun.
It's totally different from what I normally do, so I'm learning a thing or two.
Are you coming up? Are you doing any sound effects as well, or is that going to be?
Yeah, we'll be doing all the sound effects. I probably a lot of them are going to be like pre-produced and they can just be played back. But Roy really wants to build in a rudimentary multi-voiced synthesizer right into it. So if we want to, we can do things like control square waves and sawtooths and stuff like that right there in the engine, just like in the old
Pretty cool.
8-bit games, which is very nice to be able to do for sound effects especially.
Yeah, exactly. And from what I gather, um, the game's probably um, geared towards people our age. You know what I mean? As far as the not so much a throwback, but just yeah, I would hazard to guess anyway. If it's being created by people our age, then it's probably more for people our age, right?
Yeah, well, those that old way of looking at procedural synthesis would be
Hmm.
the right way of saying it. But those old 8-bitty sounds, they only really sound 8-bit when you're only giving them 8 bits tall and you're only
Right.
sampling them at a very slow rate. When you take those same waveforms and you play them at 32 bits at a very high sampling rate, they sound very, very different than they did back in the day. Uh,
Right.
yeah, so I mean, every synthesizer out there, digital plug-in synthesizers, whatever, it all works on the same principles. With the modern technology, it doesn't need to sound like a throwback to be
No.
able to do live procedural sound synthesis.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, you can still record it at you can record it at 24-bit and play. I mean, it's sort of the same idea as MP3s, right? Like you can people record stuff at 2496, and then the medium that it gets sold at is at an extremely squashed MP3, and people still buy it. So it really it sounds like you're not going for that specifically, but I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
You could record stuff at a high sampling rate and just have the game playback at 8-bit, but whatever.
I love making music that has that 8-bit retro throwback sound, though. I love it. I absolutely adore
I,
it.
w- I was gonna say that I have that organ at my studio, and that thing sounds like 8-bit. Like it doesn't. Even if I record it in 24-bit, it still sounds like, it just has that
It's
sound.
awesome.
Yeah, there's, the attack is only so much, and it is what it is. Yeah, I know. I need to sample the damn thing and send you the files. um, so I was gonna mention as far as uh, old sounding soundtracks versus newer sounding soundtracks. I don't know if you're much of a. Doesn't sound like it, but like Skyrim, kind of, or have you seen Skyrim or heard
I know a
Skyrim
bunch
yet?
of people that play it, but no, I haven't messed with that one. I'm still on Minecraft because I absolutely adore it, and Skyrim came out after, So I don't know. Maybe I'll get to it someday.
I've been on the best software stuff since Morrowind, and I went back and got some of the games that were only for PC, but Morrowind was for Xbox, and then Oblivion came out and Skyrim for Xbox 360. But it's well agreed in the gamer community, like the best gamer community, that Morrowind had the best soundtrack out of all of them, and that includes Skyrim, with all of the 136 layers of guys doing the chanting, kind of like very gladiator sounding stuff. It just had a beautiful theme for when bad stuff happened and good stuff happened, and then just the walking through there was about, I guess, 6 or 8 different sort of themes that ran through the whole thing. But so that's 12 or 13 years or whatever. But yeah, I was just going to bring that up. I know that's still not the same difference as Skyrim versus Super Mario, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. It's there's a different approach these days. I mean, it's become much more game music is being produced somewhat similar to movie score music at this point. And I don't know.
They're trying to make it feel like a movie nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
sure.
totally don't go for games like that. So I don't know. I don't have as much experience listening to it because I just don't like it as much. The whole entertain me rather than give me a toy that I can entertain myself with sort of difference. I much
Mhm.
prefer the latter.
Well, I think as far as a gamer standpoint is concerned, and I think it really depends on the person. But Skyrim and the stuff that Bethesda is doing, it's an open world, so it you really can pretty much do whatever the heck you want within the game laws. I mean, it's different than other games, but um, we'll have that discussion at another point in time. I know what you're getting at, though.
Yeah, well, I'm
Yeah.
not necessarily talking about that game in particular, just the general trend, and I'm sure everybody out there knows what I mean.
Yeah.
There's those kinds of people who like games that are open ended and open world, and you do what you want to do, and you have fun the way you want to have it. And there's people who like the cinematic. I'm sitting here watching a game.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to hit A every once in a while, and yeah, I know exactly. Though, and those games, I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. Those ones. I mean, there needs to be a certain amount of input from the player, but
Yeah, I think there's a place for both those kind of things. I think games as an entertainment, just like a movie. I think that's absolutely fine if that's what you're into. I have no problem with that whatsoever because the demo scene of the 8-bit era computers, those guys are still around, still making demos, still composing music for their demos, and still making cool graphics effects going on those old computers like the Commodore
there's still
64,
tons of.
Atari. It's still kicking, and you know what? There's no user interaction with those things. They're purely a form of entertainment. You put them on, you watch it load the disc, you watch it do its thing, and it plays
Yeah,
music and it flashes lights in your face. And
yeah.
yeah, it's the same thing, but one of them is cool to me, one of them isn't, and that's okay.
I mean, I've even gone further than Commodore 64 and have in the last few years coded basic games, that text adventure games, just for the sake, because I used to do that when I was a kid, um, and that's no sound whatsoever. But
Yeah, the
uh,
soundtrack for Zork was great. I loved that.
yeah, exactly. Whatever was on the radio.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was gonna say too, and there's guys doing like Visual Basic games still. Like now Visual Basic's come a long way since when it first came out, but I know there's still a community. There's a community for everything nowadays, obviously. But yeah, I mean, and those guys need music too, right?
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is interesting.
Yeah, I think video game music is a very interesting topic. I'm looking here, trying to find this YouTube channel that I ran across this week of this musician. Like I was saying, I play Minecraft. We run on tymkrs server and all that with all of our buddies. And we subscribe to a couple of different YouTube channels where guys are just sort of doing their Minecraft thing, usually technical, building very intricate contraptions and such. And one of them put up a cool 3D animation thing that they'd done. A guy that goes by the name of Slamacow. It was a really cool sort of it was almost Pixar-esque, it had that heart-wrenching sort of feel to it. It was
Neat.
happy and brilliant and sad at the same time. And the he actually put a link to his the girl who'd done the music for it. And then I went to her channel and I watched the actual video of her performing the song, just sitting in front of one of those crappy USB microphones. The quality was meh, whatever. But people
Yeah,
have
that
what they
doesn't
have.
never matters though. Yeah.
As long as the performance is there, it's great. And the performance was totally there. I was like, okay, so this person's interesting. So I thought I'd look at a couple of her other videos and see what she was about. And it turns out that she's a video game composer and has been working in the industry doing that for many years. And I was like, that is so cool. And I watched some of her videos, and she was talking about how she was growing up about the same time I was. And what she had done would hook her NES up to her tape deck and record the soundtracks for things like Mega Man and Castlevania and such
Okay.
onto tape. And then she'd listen to the tapes like, they were the music that she liked, right? Whereas everyone
That's
else was
funny.
taping off the radio. And I just thought that was totally cool, and I just had to share that.
No, that's totally cool. That's hilarious. So she would just and the great thing about those games too is the longer you played, the longer you could the longer you could have it
Yeah,
just go.
the song goes as long as you want it to. It's really
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
I remember it. Speaking to the same thing, I remember my cousins videotaping the NES. I don't even know why, because they spent all their time playing it, but they would tape and make compilation tapes of, I don't know, video games that they were playing and whatever. It was very weird. Like I don't know why you would record the video of a video game that you were playing, but they would do stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's whatever is that. It's definitely strange though. But yeah, it's whatever floats your boat. I think
Yeah, yeah. And I think music is, it can come in so many different forms. And it's just if you grew up at that particular era, there's sort of a nostalgia and magic to it, but also in a way, it's not just nostalgia because like I said earlier, the people who were writing the music for some of these things, like Ron Hubbard, he's one of the great composers on the Commodore 64. These guys are very, very talented musicians and trained composers before those computers were even around. And some of the music that they wrote is absolutely wonderful. And the fact that they were able to make it on such a limited platform with such a limited voicing
and
is
still
just
made
a
it great.
testament to their skill and ability.
Yeah, exactly. Are we out of time?
We got about a minute, Shane. So what do you got?
Okay. Not a whole lot of anything.
Okay.
It's been a fairly quiet week for me. I've been still working on record transfers and redrawing lines for days on end. So
Studio
good.
work is so thrilling sometimes.
Yes, yeah, and sadly on some of these LP transfers, these are the only versions I can find, and if they're crackly, I gotta sit and fix them up. And I've done a few things that I have to be quiet about, but yeah, for the most part, I have to just cut out the crackles. But there was one song in particular that I had to actually fix the performance by taking and repairing a section because a really bad skip. So I had to take the next time the section came around, I grabbed 8 bars of it and pasted it into the section that had the skip, and sort of recreated the performance. So it's not the complete original performance, but now
You're the
everybody
only
knows.
one who will ever notice.
Well, yeah. The
Hopefully.
thing is, though, when you're doing restorative stuff, you should really be restoring it. It's sort of like being a librarian. It has to be original, and that's it, kind of. But yeah, this obviously you have to sell to, and selling a big ka-chunk in the middle of a song is really the best thing in the world. So
Yeah.
that's what I had to do. Think outside the box.
Well, you can always keep both copies of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the one thing I have to say, though. If you, as an engineer, if you can edit 2 tracks, a lot of people think that you can't edit a 2-track, but you can get really good at doing stuff just doing 2 tracks. You'll be amazing at doing editing on a
Yep.
huge scale.
And that's the same exact thing we were just talking about. Those guys only had 3 voices to work with, and if you can edit with 2 tracks, like Delia Derbyshire, who we've mentioned before, was running just multiple decks, but just 1 or 2 tracks on each deck. You can learn tricks and skills that you can apply when the rules go away and you have more space to go on. You will make much better use of that space than other people.
Exactly. And yeah, no, you're right. There was something else that was coming to me, but I lost it.
Well,
Yeah.
limitations are very, very useful things sometimes, and I think that's important to remember. But, speaking of limitations, that's basically the end of the show. We went over, that's okay.
Right.
We didn't stay within our limitations, but we're professionals, so we can
Next
get
week
away with that.
Show. No, I'm just joking. All right.
Well, that's it for us for this week. You guys can find this show every week at PatchBay.tv. We put it up on Friday evenings. There's an RSS feed there if you want to have the show automatically downloaded to your phone or iTunes. You can push play on the page too. It's super easy. We'll see you guys next week.